Over the last couple years, I've worked on quite a few different game projects, but to this day, I have never actually made a game by myself. I think it's about time I changed that. And since you guys love my Landfall content so much, I'm going to attempt to recreate Peak by myself. But here's the thing. I like to post a video every single week, and since these videos take me a few days to edit, that leaves me with 2 days to make the game. Why am I doing that? First things first, I'm gonna need to figure out some goals. Peak is a game about climbing an absolutely massive mountain. You have to deal with things like managing stamina and hunger, finding random items to help you out, and most importantly, figuring out how to get up there without dying. After playing the game for a bit of research, I boiled down Peak's mechanics and put them into a few main categories on Trello, that way I can stay on task. And with that, I think we're ready to start the challenge. All right, I've got a 48-hour timer on my phone here, and we're going to start right now. Let's do this. First things first, we need to make a project. So let's open good old Unreal Engine and make a new game. But wait, we need a project name. And I don't think I can just legally call it Peak. But you know what that kind of looks like right there? A cliff. Take that, United States copyright law. Now that I had a name, I was able to create a new Unreal Engine project using the first-person template. That way we had a little bit of functionality right out the gate. Lucky for us, Unreal has a built-in character movement component, which means right off the bat, we've already got walking and jumping set up. But I was still missing a pretty crucial piece of the standard movement set, which was sprinting. After a bit, I had coded some functionality for adjusting the character's movement speed, decreasing their stamina while they're running, and I added some very professional-looking UI at the bottom of the screen. That way you know how much stamina you have. And with that, boom, movement's done. Now that we can move our character around, we need a character to move around. Because right now it's just a cylinder. First things first, I went onto Google to find a reference picture, imported it into Maya, and started modeling. I'll be honest, I consider myself a pretty good prop modeler, but I've never actually modeled a character before, and after spending way longer than I'd like to admit modeling this guy, I think he turned out pretty good. Just don't look at the hands, I tried my best, okay? Now we've got a character in the game, but he's looking kind of lifeless. We need some animations. Now I could have spent a long time trying to rig and animate this guy by myself, which I totally didn't try to do, by the way. Or I could just throw it into the Mixamo microwave and now have a massive animation library I can work with for completely free. This is about the time I realized I had hit my first major hiccup. Remember those hands I made? The ones I specifically said not to look at? Well, my dumb butt, who's only ever made third-person games, completely forgot that since Peak is a first-person game, the entire model is useless, except for one part, the hands. So I literally had to take the entire model and delete everything except for the hands. Why? All right, it's a little bit over 5 hours in now, so I just took a break to get some food. I'm feeling good and recharged. Overall, things are going a little bit slower than I would have liked. I don't think I'm not on track, but it's about time to start programming. I'm about to work on the climbing system. I'm really excited to get into that. Programming is where I'm strongest, so I'm hoping that this goes pretty quickly. Climbing is at the literal core of Peak, so I need to make sure I get this right. My idea is that I would do a small trace in front of the player, and if that trace hits a wall, then I allow them to climb upwards. And as with everything, this worked completely well right off the bat without any bugs. I even found some nice climbing animations on Mixamo, so now we've got magical climbing hands. I also added some extra traces to help detect when the player was at the top of whatever they were climbing, so that they would kind of mantle up on top of it. But there was still one big problem. I could only climb up and down. There was no sideways or diagonal. And due to the lack of sideways climbing animations on Mixamo, I was kind of stuck. I figured I was gonna have to spend a while reanimating some sideways climbing animations, but then I had an idea. So I ended up building a system that would rotate the character's spine towards their relative velocity. This meant that I could keep using the same upwards climbing animation, but now it's just pointing in the direction that I'm climbing. And at this point, climbing was working, and it honestly felt pretty good. And with that, I can officially mark climbing as complete. That took a while. It is almost 4 a.m. I'm about like 9 hours in almost to the challenge, so I'm going to go get some rest, but climbing's working, so I'm super happy about that. And then tomorrow I need to work on the climbing jump, and then I'm just gonna start working on a bunch of items and things and start building the map. But super happy with where I'm at right now. I can't believe how good the climbing is already. It was now day 2, and I spent the first few hours just trying to get the lunging system to work when you're on a wall. And after working out a few interesting bugs, it was actually working pretty well. Looks like the last thing on my climbing checklist is fall damage. Falling in Peak doesn't just do damage. No. In Peak, when you fall far enough, your character's bones turn into literal jelly and you go tumbling down the mountain at high velocity. We need that. To do that, all we need to do is set up an event to trigger whenever the player hits the ground, check their velocity the frame prior to hitting the ground, and then if their velocity is high enough, we just deal some damage. Then if that damage number's high enough, then we simulate physics. Oh yeah. And then once we tie it up all in game, you too can have accurate jelly bones fall damage. And so can this guy, and that guy, and all of these guys. And sometimes if you were lucky, you will get a free trip to outer space. After that, I just needed to make it to where when the character kind of settles on the ground and isn't tumbling down anymore, they would stand back up and return player control. This is the part of the video where I'd love to explain my process, but no. I don't know if I'm just an idiot or if this is actually something that's really hard to get to work right, but I spent literal hours trying to get this guy to stand back up properly, and it still doesn't even always work right. I got to the point that it was working good enough, and I had spent just way too long working on this and needed to move on. And it works functionally at least, so we'll just have to revisit that another day because I still need to make an entire map to play on. Let me show you how. Create a landscape layer, add an ocean to your world, make a landscape material shader, sculpt out your landscape, make some rocks you can climb, find some textures for your rocks, decide not to use those textures because they don't fit the style of your game, build a material that automatically changes the texture based on the direction that polygons are facing, model some grass, add some wind to your grass, add some more wind to your grass, whoa there pal, model some pillars, populate your landscape with rocks and foliage, test out climbing on your models. Add some fog. Mess with lighting for an hour. Place a million rocks to climb. Create cool pathways and level design. Realize you need an end goal. Model that end goal. Use world position offset to add wind to your flag. And create a final goal for your player. Woo! We are done. And look at the time. It's only 4 a.m. But on the bright side, look at this map. Things are really starting to come together. All right, it's like 4:30 now. I'm about to go to bed. I just got the whole map finished. And enough art that I think is passable, so literally all I have left on my to-do list is items, and then the game will be done. I definitely got held up on a few things. I'm a little bit farther behind than I would like to be, but I also don't think I'm not on track still. I'm gonna get a few hours of sleep, wake up, and get this thing done. It was now day 3, and it was time to make some items. A lot of the items in Peak are food-based, so I started off by implementing the hunger system, then got to work on an inventory system to keep track of what items you have. I was also kind of short on time since I only had a few hours left, so instead of modeling all these out myself, I went to this website called The Base Mesh. It has a ton of models for completely free, so I chose a few of those to turn into items. And after setting up some basic interaction, you were actually able to interact with these items on the ground and they'd go into your inventory. Sometimes they'd even cause the player to go into orbit, which is pretty cool, I guess. But I wanted the player to actually physically hold the items out in front of them like it is in Peak, so I gave them a physics handle, and now they kind of lag behind wherever you're looking. Then after working out a bunch of weird bugs and making some particle effects, we officially had 4 working items. First, we've got apples, which help you with hunger and give you a little bit of health when you eat them. Bananas are rich in potassium, so for 20 seconds you don't have to worry about any stamina drain. Peppers make the character run and climb really fast for a little bit. And potatoes, well, you'll see. Unfortunately though, I did not have time to set up a proper dialogue system to show you what these items did in game, so I had to settle for the next best thing. Unlimited stamina. Health up. Health up. Unlimited stamina. Guys, I'm officially under the 2-hour mark. At this point, I had 2 hours left and I was freaking out a little bit. Everything on the Trello's done, but I still have to playtest and make an actual ending to the game. So I did what any responsible person would do that only has 2 hours left. Spend it creating and programming 2 different endings depending on a crucial decision you make throughout your run. And after populating the map with a bunch of different items and making sure the game is actually beatable, the game was done. All right, there is about 15 seconds left, and I am done. Whew, it has been a long day. Here's the entire map for the game, and you start all the way down there. You start by the shore and just kind of work your way up towards the mountain, and then you can climb on top of anything that you see and find items. And then once you make it to the mountain, you're just kind of managing hunger, health, and trying to figure out the best way to get to the top. This game's a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. It took me quite a while to actually get to the end, but once you eventually do make it to the top of the mountain, I added a super stressful parkour section that is all or nothing, and the last jump you have to jump jump and grab onto the ledge, all cinematic-like, in order to beat the game. Once you make it to the flag, you get put in this awesome cinematic, and the game is over. But if you remember, there is a second ending to the game as well. Remember how I said you will see what potatoes do? Well, if you choose to eat a potato at any point during the game, well, I'll just show you. Why'd you eat me, man? You killed my friends, and now you expect to leave? You fool. So yeah, I had officially made my very first game all on my own. Don't eat potatoes, I guess. Getting this video done in a week almost killed me, so if you guys really enjoyed, be sure to hit like and subscribe, that way I can make more videos like this in the future. Also, I'd love to put this on itch.io for you guys to download and play yourself, but out of respect of the Peak developers, I'm not going to do that, so if you want a way better experience to play, go download Peak on Steam. That being said, if you guys want to play some games of mine in the future, let me know any other games you want me to make or challenges in the comments below, and maybe I can turn this into a series. Anywho, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!